I should have let him die that night, but instead I ran toward him. The first thing I remember is the music, soft and distant like it belonged to another world entirely. The rooftops smelled like rain, an expensive cologne, the kind that lingers in the air long after the person is gone. I was standing near the edge holding a glass I hadn't touched, watching people laugh like nothing bad had ever happened to them. That's when I saw it, a tiny red dot, steady and unnatural, resting just above his heart. At first my brain refused to process it. It looked too small, too precise, like a reflection or a trick of the light. But it didn't move. When he did, it followed him, breathing with him like it belonged there. And suddenly, everything inside me went quiet. The music faded, the laughter blurred, the city lights behind him turned into streaks of gold and white like a painting smeared by shaking hands. I didn't know his name, then I didn't know who he was. All I saw was a man standing alone for half a second, longer than he should have been, and something about that moment felt wrong, not dangerous, not yet, just wrong, like a step out of rhythm in a song you can't stop hearing. I took a step forward, my heels clicked against the stone floor louder than they should have. My heart picked up speed, each beat hitting harder than the last. I remember thinking, this isn't your business, you should walk away, you should pretend you didn't see anything. But my body didn't listen. It never does when it matters most. The red shifted slightly, climbing higher with his breath. I saw his chest rise, slow, controlled, unaware, and that's when the fear hit, not loud, not panic, just sharp and certain, the kind of fear that doesn't scream, it whispers, you're out of time. I dropped the glass, it shattered somewhere behind me. I didn't look back, I didn't think, I just moved. My hand hit his chest harder than I expected, solid, warm, real. He turned just enough for our eyes to meet. Confusion flickering across his face, deep, steady. Eyes that didn't belong to someone who startled easily. There was something else there too, something colder, something that made my skin tighten, like I had stepped into a room I wasn't meant to enter. Move, I said, but it came out as a breath more than a word. He didn't move, so I pushed again, harder this time, forcing him off balance. My fingers curled into the fabric of his suit, pulling, dragging, breaking whatever invisible line had been drawn around him. Time snapped back into place. All at once a sharp sound cut through the air, not loud, just final, like something had been decided without asking anyone's permission. The space where he had been standing felt suddenly empty, too empty, like a missed heartbeat. He stumbled into me, and for a second we were too close, close enough for me to feel the heat of him, the steady rhythm under his ribs, still there, still beating. I hadn't stopped anything yet, I had only changed it. His hand closed around my wrist, not rough, not gentle, just certain. He looked down at me like he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. Why would you do that? He asked. His voice was low, controlled, like everything else about him, but there was a crack in it, small, almost invisible, like the first sign of something breaking. I swallowed, trying to find words that felt too small for what had just happened. You were going to get hurt, I said. It sounded ridiculous even to me. He didn't answer right away. His eyes moved past me, scanning something I couldn't see, calculating, measuring, deciding. And then they came back to me, slower this time, heavier, like I had just stepped into the center of something I didn't understand. You shouldn't have seen that, he said quietly. And that's when I realized I hadn't saved him. I had made myself part of his world. His grip did not tighten, but it did not loosen either. And that was worse, because it meant control, not panic, the kind of control that made everything around him feel like it belonged to him, including the air I was trying to breathe. I could hear movement now, footsteps sharp and fast, voices low and urgent, but I did not turn to look. I could not. My focus was locked on him, on the way his I studied mine, like he was trying to place me into a category that did not exist. What did you see? He asked. The question was simple, but it carried weight, like the answer mattered more than anything else happening on that rooftop. My mouth went dry. I thought about lying. I thought about saying nothing, about pretending I was just clumsy, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But something in his expression told me he would know. He would always know. A red light, I said quietly, on your chest. For a second, nothing changed. Then something shifted behind his eyes, subtle but real, like a door closing somewhere deep inside him. He released my wrist, slowly, not as permission, but as a decision, like he no longer needed to hold me in place. You should not have noticed that, he said again, softer this time, but colder. The wind picked up around us, pulling at my hair, my dress, the edges of the moment that had just happened. I became aware of the space again, the people who had stepped back, the silence that had settled in a way that did not belong at a party. Someone near the entrance spoke into a phone. Another man stood a few feet away watching us, not openly, not obviously, but enough that I felt it like pressure against my skin. I took a step back, then another, trying to create distance, trying to step out of whatever I had just walked into. "I am sorry," I said, because it felt like the only thing I could say, even though I did not know what I was apologizing for. I just reacted. He tilted his head slightly, studying me again, not the way someone looks at a stranger, but the way someone examines a variable that could change everything. "People do not react like that," he said. "Not for someone they do not know." I did not have an answer for that, because he was right. I would not have done that for anyone else, not like that, not without thinking, not without fear. But I had, and that was the problem. A man approached him, then close enough to speak, but not close enough to interrupt. Whatever this was, his voice was low, controlled. "The situation is contained." The words meant nothing to me, and everything at the same time. Alex did not look away from me when he responded, "Good." Just one word, calm and final, like the conversation was already over before it began. The man hesitated for half a second, his eyes flicking toward me before returning to Alex. "And her," he added carefully. That word landed heavier than anything else. Her, like I was no longer a person, just a detail to be addressed. Alex finally looked away from me, then just for a moment, just long enough to acknowledge the question before his gaze returned and settled again, more focused, more certain. "She stays," he said. My chest tightened at the words, not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet realization settling in my bones. I had crossed something invisible, and there was no stepping back from it. "I have somewhere to be," I said quickly, the words coming out faster than I intended. "I should go." It sounded weak, even to me. He did not move to stop me, but he did not step aside either. "You can walk away," he said, "but it will not change what already happened." I swallowed hard, my fingers curling slightly at my sides as I tried to hold on to something solid, something normal. "Which is what exactly?" I asked. He held my gaze steady, unblinking, like he wanted me to understand every word that came next. "You saw something you were not supposed to see," he said, "and you chose to act on it." A pause, just long enough to let it settle. "That makes you part of this now." The city lights flickered behind him, the sound of distant traffic rising up from the streets below, like the world continuing without me. I felt it, then not fear, not exactly, something heavier, something inevitable, like a door had closed quietly behind me, and I had not heard it until now. "I did not ask for that," I whispered. He almost smiled, not warmth, not kindness, just recognition. "No one ever does," he said. I did not remember leaving the rooftop. I only remembered the feeling of his words following me down every step, like something unseen, keeping pace with my breath. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, the mirrored walls reflecting a version of me that looked the same, but was not. My hands were steady, but my thoughts were not. They moved too fast, circling the same moment over and over. The red, that the sound, the way his eyes changed when I told him what I saw. By the time the doors opened to the lobby, the world had returned to normal, or at least it pretended to. People laughed, glasses clinked, someone near the bar argued about something trivial, like nothing had shifted, like the air was not still holding its breath. I walked out into the night without looking back. The street was quieter than I expected, the kind of quiet that comes after midnight when the city slows but never fully sleeps. My car was parked half a block away under a flickering streetlight. I fumbled with my keys once before getting them into the lock, my fingers colder than they should have been. The engine started on the second try. The familiar sound should have grounded me, but it did not. Instead, it felt distant, like I was listening to it from somewhere else entirely. I pulled onto the street, checking my mirrors more than usual, even though I told myself there was no reason to. Nothing followed me at first, no headlights lingering too long, no cars turning when I turned, just the steady rhythm of traffic lights and empty intersections stretching ahead of me. I told myself it was over, that I had done something reckless and strange, and now it was finished, that I would wake up tomorrow and it would feel like a story I had imagined. But the thought did not settle. It hovered just out of reach, like something I could not quite convince myself to believe. I stopped at a red light 3 blocks from my apartment. The city around me was still quiet, the hum of distant traffic low and constant. I tapped my fingers against the steering wheel once, twice, trying to shake the feeling that had followed me since I left him. That was when I noticed the car behind me. It had been there for at least 2 turns. I was sure of it now. Black sedan, nothing unusual about it except the way it kept its distance, just enough not to be obvious, just enough to stay unnoticed. If I was not paying attention, my grip tightened on the wheel as the light turned green. The first drove forward steady, not too fast, not too slow, and watched in the rearview mirror as it moved with me, turning when I turned, stopping when I stopped, the space between Us never changed, not closer, not farther, just there, a quiet presence that refused to disappear. My heart began to pick up again, not panic, not yet, but awareness, sharp and focused. I turned onto a different street, one I did not usually take, just to be sure. The sedan followed. I did it again, another turn, another change in direction, still there. By the time I reached my building, my pulse had settled into something heavy and certain. The car slowed as I pulled into the lot, but it did not enter, it stayed on the street, engine running, headlights dimmed, like it was waiting for something or someone. I sat there for a moment, longer than I should have, my hands resting on the wheel, my breath slow and measured. This was not coincidence, this was not random. I stepped out of the car, closing the door quietly behind me. The night air felt colder, now sharper against my skin. I did not look at the sedan as I walked toward the entrance, but I felt it there, the weight of it, the presence of it, watching without needing to be seen. The lobby lights flickered slightly as I stepped inside, the door locking behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. I exhaled slowly, telling myself I was safe, telling myself it was just a car, just a moment, just something that would pass. But even as I moved toward the elevator, even as I pressed the button and watched the numbers descend, I knew better, because somewhere between that rooftop and this quiet building, something had changed, and whatever had been set in motion was not going to stop. Just because I walked away, I did not sleep that night. I told myself I would just lie down for a few minutes, just long enough for my thoughts to settle. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, the red dot, steady and precise, the way it moved with his breath, like it had chosen him. The clock beside my bed read 2:14, then 3:07, then 4:32. Time passed, but it did not feel like it moved. At some point, I gave up on sleep entirely and sat by the window, watching the empty street below. The black sedan was gone, but the absence did not make me feel better. It made me feel watched in a different way, like something had already finished observing and moved on to the next step. Morning came slowly, gray light creeping into the room inch by inch until everything looked softer, less threatening than it had in the dark. I got dressed on autopilot, jeans, sweater, nothing that stood out, nothing that mattered. The routine helped, a little coffee helped more, the warmth grounded me, the bitterness familiar enough to hold on to. I told myself again that I was overreacting, that people get followed sometimes, that it meant nothing, that I was connecting things that did not belong together. I almost believed it until I stepped outside. The air was cool, the kind of crisp morning that should have felt refreshing, but instead it made my skin tighten. My car sat where I left it, untouched, nothing out of place. I unlocked it, slowly scanning the area without turning my head too much, trying not to look like I was looking. Nothing unusual. No black sedan, no lingering presence, just the normal rhythm of a weekday morning. People heading to work, doors opening, engines starting, life continuing. Without hesitation, I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding and slid into the driver's seat. The engine started smoothly. The radio came on automatically, some morning talk show host laughing about something trivial. I let it play because silence felt worse. The drive to work was uneventful. Traffic was light, the streets familiar, each turn exactly where it should be. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, I had almost convinced myself that last night had been an isolated moment, something strange, but finished, something I could leave behind with enough distance. I grabbed my bag, stepped out of the car, and locked it behind me. The building doors were just ahead, glass reflecting the street behind me. I reached for the handle, and that was when I saw it, not in front of me, not beside me. Behind me, a car pulling into the lot, slow. Controlled, black sedan. My breath caught, just slightly, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for me to feel it. The reflection showed the driver's side window, dark, impossible to see through. The car came to a stop 3 spaces away from mine, engine still running. I stood there for half a second too long, my hand resting on the door handle, my reflection staring back at me like it was waiting for me to decide something I did not understand. Then I pulled the door open and stepped inside. The lobby felt warmer, brighter, safer. But the feeling did not last. I could still sense it, that presence just outside, like it had followed me. Without needing to enter, I moved toward the elevator, pressing the button harder than necessary. My fingers felt colder again. The door slid open. I stepped inside and turned just before they closed. The glass doors across the lobby reflected the parking lot beyond, and for a brief second, just before the elevator sealed me in, I saw the driver's side door of the sedan open. A figure stepped out, tall, composed, movement deliberate. Even from that distance, I could not see his face, but I did not need to. Something in the way he moved, something in the way the world seemed to shift around him, told me exactly who it was. The elevator doors closed with a soft final sound, cutting off the view completely. I stood there alone, the hum of the lift filling the silence, my reflection staring back at me again, but this time I did not recognize it, because deep down I already knew this was not coincidence anymore. And he was not done with me. The elevator ride felt shorter this time, or maybe my sense of time was the thing breaking, because when the doors opened, I was not ready for the normalcy that waited outside. My floor looked exactly the same, fluorescent lights, steady, the faint hum of computers already running, coworkers moving through routines that did not include being washed or followed, or pulled into something they did not understand. I stepped out slowly, my shoes quieter than usual against the carpet, like I was trying not to be noticed, even though no one was looking at me. "Emily, you are late." Jessica's voice cut through the haze, bright and casual, like nothing in the world had shifted. I forced a small smile, nodding as I passed her desk. "Traffic." I said the word, automatic, easy, practiced. It sounded normal enough to convince her, but not me. I could still feel it, that weight from the parking lot, like it had followed me inside without needing to show itself. I sat at my desk, placing my bag down, carefully lining everything up the way I always did: pen, notebook, phone, small routines that made everything feel controlled. My screen lit up, emails, notifications, deadlines waiting for me to care about them. I tried, I really did. I opened the first message, read the first line, and realized I had no idea what it said. My mind kept drifting back to the reflection in the glass. The way he had stepped out of the car, calm, like he had nowhere else to be. Like this had always been his next move. I shook my head slightly, forcing myself to focus, typing a response that I would not remember sending. The minutes passed, then an hour, maybe more. I could not tell. Time felt strange, stretched thin, like it might snap if I pulled on it too hard. That was when my phone buzzed, a number I did not recognize. No name, no context, just 10 digits staring back at me. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, telling myself to ignore it, telling myself it meant nothing, but something in my chest tightened, the same quiet certainty from the night before, the same feeling that this was not random. I answered before I could change my mind. "Hello." My voice came out steady, which surprised me. There was a pause on the other, and not long, just enough to make the silence feel intentional. Then his voice: "You made it to work." It was not a question. I closed my eyes for half a second, gripping the edge of my desk to keep my hands from reacting. "How did you get this number?" I asked, keeping my tone as even as I could. Another pause, shorter this time. "That is not the important part," he said. I could hear something faint in the background, not noise exactly, more like space, like he was somewhere open, somewhere quiet. "You were followed this morning," he continued. "That should concern you more." My stomach dropped slightly, not in shock, but in confirmation, like hearing something I already knew spoken out loud. "Made it real? That was you?" I said. He did not answer directly. "I needed to make sure no one else reached you first." The words settled heavily, each one carrying more meaning than he explained. I glanced around the office instinctively, but everything looked the same. Jessica laughing at something across the room, someone typing too loudly, a printer running somewhere in the distance. Normal life continuing, just inches away from whatever this was. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. He exhaled softly, not frustration, not impatience, just something controlled. "Because you acted last night," he said, "and actions have consequences." I swallowed the word consequences, echoing in my head louder than it should have. "I saved you," I said before I could stop myself. The line went silent again, longer this time. And when he spoke, his voice had changed, not louder, not softer, just sharper. "That is exactly the problem," he said. My fingers tightened around the phone, my pulse picking up again. "Then what do you want from me?" I asked, a beat then too. "Nothing you can give by staying where you are," he replied. "Leave work early today." My breath caught slightly. "No." I said, the word coming out faster than I expected, stronger too, like it surprised both of us. "I am not just going to walk out because you told me to." There was no anger in his response, no reaction at all, just that same calm certainty. "You misunderstand," he said quietly. "I am not asking." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone for a long second, the screen dark, now reflecting my own expression, tense, uncertain, caught between leaving and staying, between ignoring him and listening to the part of me that knew he was not wrong. Something had started the moment I stepped into his world, and whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was already too far inside it to pretend I could walk away. I stared at the phone long after the call ended, like it might ring again and take the decision out of my hands, but it did not. The office noise crept back, and slowly keyboards tapping, chairs shifting, someone laughing too loudly at something I could not hear over the weight pressing down in my chest. "Leave work early today," his voice replayed in my head, not louder, not urgent, just certain, like it was already decided, like I was the only one who had not caught up. Yet I tried to focus again, opening another email, forcing my eyes to track each word, but they blurred together, sentences losing meaning halfway through. I read the same line 3 times and could not tell you what it said. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. My body was here, but my mind was still in that parking lot, still in that moment when the elevator doors closed, and I knew he had followed me here, not physically, not fully, but enough to remind me that distance did not matter anymore. I pushed my chair back slightly, the movement drawing a glance from Jessica across the aisle. "You okay?" she asked, casual but curious. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just a headache." It was not entirely a lie. Something was building behind my eyes, a pressure that had nothing to do with sleep or coffee. She accepted it with a small shrug, already turning back to her screen. That was the thing about normal life. It kept moving even when yours did not care that something had shifted beneath your feet. I stood up, slowly grabbing my bag like I was just stepping out for air, just taking a break, no different from any other day. But my pulse told a different story, each step toward the exit heavier than it should have, like I was walking towards something instead of away from it. The hallway felt longer, the fluorescent lights harsher. I could hear my own footsteps too clearly, too loud against the tile. The elevator dinged when it arrived, the doors sliding open with mechanical indifference. I stepped inside alone and pressed the button for the lobby. My reflection stared back at me again, eyes sharper, now more aware, not confused anymore, just caught between choices that did not feel like choices. The doors opened to the lobby, and the world greeted me with the same false normalcy as before, sunlight spilling through the glass doors, people passing by. Without hesitation, that was the part that felt unreal. I walked outside, the air warmer now, the morning chill gone, replaced by something softer, but it did not reach me. My gaze moved immediately to the street, to the spaces where cars idled, where people waited, where something could be watching. The black sedan was not there, not in the lot, not along the curb, not anywhere I could see. For a moment, I felt something close to relief, small, fragile, like it might break if I held onto it too tightly. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe leaving early was unnecessary. I took a step toward my car, keys already in my hand. And then my phone buzzed again, this time a message, no number, no name, just a single line. "I know you are still standing there." My breath caught instantly, my body going still, without thinking, without choice. I did not turn, I did not scan the street. I just stood there, the weight of those words settling into me like something real, something immediate, something that erased any doubt I had left. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my gaze, not to the street, not to the parking lot, but to the glass doors behind me, using the reflection the way I had before. And there he was, not close, not within reach, but there across the street, leaning slightly against a dark vehicle, like he had been there the entire time, like he had never left. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but his attention was not. It was fixed on me, steady and unyielding. Even from that distance, I could feel it, like a line pulled tight between us. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening around my phone. As another message appeared, "Do not make me come get you." I closed my eyes for half a second, the words settling heavier than anything he had said before, not because of how they sounded, but because I believed them. When I opened my eyes again, he had not moved. He did not need to. I understood now. This was not about control in the way I thought. This was about inevitability, and whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was already walking toward him. I did not remember deciding to move, but somehow I was already stepping off the curb, my feet carrying me forward before my mind could argue with them. The street between us was not wide, maybe 30 feet, but it felt longer, like crossing it meant leaving something behind for good. Cars passed in the distance, the sound muted, like it belonged to a different layer of reality. My focus stayed locked on him, on the way he watched me. Without shifting, without hesitation, like he had known exactly what I would do before I did. Halfway across, I slowed, not stopping, just enough for doubt to catch up to me. This was insane. I did not know him. I did not know what he wanted or what I was walking into. Every instinct I had ever trusted told me to turn around, to go back inside, to pretend none of this was happening. But those instincts had not stopped me last night. Either they had not stopped me from pushing him out of the way, from stepping into something I did not understand. And now here I was, finishing what I had started. When I reached the other side, he straightened slightly, not surprised, not relieved, just acknowledging that I had done what he expected. He looked exactly the same as the night before, composed, controlled, like nothing could touch him. Dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone, just enough to make him look less formal, but not less dangerous. His eyes held mine. They Entire time steady and unreadable, you left. Early, he said. His voice was calm, like we were discussing something ordinary, like this was a conversation between people who met like this every day. You told me to. I replied. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I did not take them back. Something flickered in his expression, not irritation, not approval, just recognition, like he had expected resistance and was measuring it. Good. He said simply. The words settled between us heavier than it should have, like it meant more than agreement. I crossed my arms slightly, not to challenge him, but to hold on to something solid. You said I was followed, I said. And then you followed me. His gaze did not waver. There is a difference, he said. They do not want you safe. A chill ran through me, not sudden, not dramatic, just a slow realization tightening around my thoughts. And you do? I asked. He paused for a fraction of a second, just long enough to make the answer matter. I need you alive. He said. The words landed differently than I expected, not comforting, not threatening, just factual, like he was stating a condition that had already been decided. I searched his face for something more, an explanation, a reason, anything that made sense, but there was nothing. He was not offering answers, he was offering reality. Why? I pressed. Why me? He glanced briefly at the street, then back at me, like he was calculating time, space, risk all at once. Because you changed something last night, he said. And the people who plan that do not like variables. Variables, the word echoed in my head, clinical, detached, like I had become a piece in something larger than I could see. So what happens now? I asked quietly. He stepped closer, not enough to invade my space, but enough to shift the air between us, enough that I could feel the presence of him more clearly, the control, the stillness, the weight of someone who never moved without purpose. Now you stop pretending this is optional, he said. My breath caught slightly, not because of the words, but because of how certain he sounded, like the decision had already been made, and I was just catching up to it. I have a job, I have a life, I said. I am not just going to disappear because you say so. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened, just enough to make my chest tighten. Your life changed the moment you touched me, he said quietly. The memory hit instantly, my hand against his chest, the heat, the force, the moment. Everything shifted. You can go back inside, he continued. You can sit at your desk and pretend this is not real. A pause, just long enough for the words to settle. But they will not forget you. The street felt quieter, now the world pulling back again, leaving just the space between us and the truth neither of us was avoiding anymore. I looked at him, really looked this time, not just at what he was, but at what he represented, the danger, the control, the certainty. And for the first time since this started, I understood something clearly. I had not saved him, I had stepped into his world. And now it was deciding what to do with me. The space between us felt smaller now, not because he moved closer, but because there was no distance left to hide behind. The city noise returned in fragments, a car passing somewhere, behind me a door closing in the building across the street, but it all sounded distant. Like it did not belong to this moment. I drew in a slow breath, trying to steady something inside me that refused to settle. If I walk away right now, what happens? I asked. He did not hesitate. You will make it home, he said. Maybe even sleep for a few hours. His tone was even almost gentle, but there was something underneath it, something that did not offer comfort. And then, I pressed. He held my gaze steady, unblinking. Then they will try again. The words landed without force, but they stayed like weights settling into place. I shook my head slightly, not in disagreement, but in resistance. You do not know that, I said. He tilted his head just enough to acknowledge the thought. I do, he replied simply, because they already adjusted once last night. My chest tightened at that, the memory flickering back, the timing, the precision, the way everything had almost aligned before I stepped in. You think I changed their plan? I said quietly. I know you did, he answered. There was no doubt in his voice, no space for interpretation, just certainty. Like this was not theory, this was experience. I looked past him for a second, the street stretching out in both directions, people moving through it, unaware of the conversation happening in the middle of their world, unaware that something had shifted just beneath the surface. So what you are saying is that I am a problem now, I said. He took a step closer, this time not enough to crowd me, but enough that I could feel the change in the air again, the way everything seemed to align around him. You are not the problem, he said. You are the disruption. The words settled differently, not blame, not accusation, something else, something more permanent. I let out a breath I had been holding without realizing it. And disruptions get removed, I said. He watched me for a long second, and for the first time, there was something in his expression that almost looked like hesitation, not uncertainty, just a pause, like he was choosing his next words carefully. Only if They are left unprotected. He said that was the first time he said it like that, not implied, not hidden behind control or inevitability, but clear and direct. My eyes lifted to meet his, fully now protected by you. I asked. He did not look away. Yes, the simplicity of it should have made it easier to understand, but it did not. It made it heavier, like the choice in front of me had more weight than I was ready to carry. I glanced back toward the building, the glass doors reflecting a version of me that still belonged there, still part of a life that made sense. Emails, meetings, coffee breaks, things that could be explained. And if I say no? I asked softly. His expression did not change, but the air around us did. Something subtle, something final. Then you are on your own, he said, and they will not hesitate next time. Silence followed, not empty, but full of everything unsaid, everything that had already been decided, whether I accepted it or not. I closed my eyes for a brief second, just long enough to feel the shift inside me. The moment something settled into place, not comfort, not acceptance, just clarity. When I opened them again, I was already looking at him differently, not as a stranger, not even as a threat, but as the only constant in something I could not control. Where are we going? I asked. His gaze softened just slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel it. Somewhere they cannot reach you easily, he said. He turned then, not checking if I would follow, not needing to. I stood there for half a second longer, the last piece of hesitation, holding on before finally letting go. Then I stepped forward, matching his pace, the distance between us disappearing completely as I followed him toward a future I did not choose, but could no longer avoid. The car door opened before I could reach for it, and I paused just for a second, staring at the dark interior, like it was a line I could still choose not to cross. The city moved behind me, steady and indifferent, people passing by, without looking twice at what was happening. Just a few feet away to them, it was nothing, just another man, another car, another moment that did not matter. But to me it felt like everything narrowing down to this single decision. Alex did not look back as he got into the driver's seat. He did not need to. The engine started with a low, controlled hum, the kind that did not draw attention but carried power underneath it. I stepped in, closing the door behind me, and the outside world disappeared instantly. The sound faded, the light dimmed slightly, the space inside the car quieter than it should have been, like it was designed to separate itself from everything else. I sat there for a moment, hands resting in my lap, trying to steady the part of me that still wanted to question what I was doing. He pulled onto the street smoothly, no rush, no hesitation. Like this was just another drive, another routine part of his life. I glanced at him briefly, the profile of his face sharp, focused, his attention on the road ahead, like nothing about this situation was unusual. Where exactly is somewhere they cannot reach me? I asked. He did not answer right away. The silence stretched just long enough to make me aware of every small detail, the sound of the tires against the pavement, the faint scent of leather, the way the city outside shifted as we moved farther from everything I knew. Somewhere controlled, he said finally, somewhere predictable. The words made sense, but they did not feel comforting. Predictable meant planned, controlled meant someone else was deciding the rules. I leaned back slightly, looking out the window as familiar streets gave way to ones I did not recognize, buildings changing shape, neighborhoods shifting from crowded to quiet in a matter of minutes. You said I changed something, I said after a while. What exactly did I change? He exhaled slowly, his grip on the steering wheel steady. Timing, he said. Expectation. A brief pause. Outcome. I turned my head to look at him fully, now searching for something more than fragments. That still does not explain why I matter now, I said. His jaw tightened just slightly, not frustration, not impatience, just a sign that he was choosing how much to say. Because the people who set that up do not tolerate mistakes, he replied. And you made them look like they made one. The weight of that settled deeper than anything else, had not fear exactly, but understanding, something bigger than me, something I had stepped into without knowing the cost. The car slowed as we turned onto a long private drive, the city noise fading, completely replaced by quiet space and distance. A large gate came into view, opening before we even reached it, like we had been expected, like everything here moved on his command. I watched it swing open, without question, without delay, and felt something shift again inside me. This was his world, not hidden, not chaotic, but structured, precise, controlled in a way that made everything outside of it feel unpredictable. In comparison, the car came to a stop in front of a building that did not try to impress, but still managed to feel untouchable. Clean lines, dark windows, nothing unnecessary. I did not move right away, my hand still resting near the door handle. If I walk in there, I said quietly, there is no going back, is there? He turned to look at me, then really looked this time, not assessing, not calculating, just meeting my gaze with something steady and certain no. He said the honesty in it landed harder than anything else. He could have said no manipulation, no reassurance, just truth. I looked at the building again, then back at him, the choice settling fully into place for the first time, not forced, not rushed, just inevitable. I opened the door, stepping out into the stillness, the air different here, quieter, heavier, like it held its own rules separate from the rest of the world. He stepped out beside me, closing his door with the same controlled motion, everything about him measured, everything intentional. I took one step forward, then another, the distance between who I was and where I was going closing with each movement. I did not look back this time because I already knew there was nothing left behind for me to return to, only what was waiting ahead. And as I crossed the threshold into his world, I realized something I had been avoiding since the moment I saw that red. I did not just save his life, I changed mine.